Hello and welcome to the Lost Pines Workshop. I'm J.C. Jensen. So today I've got Kim operating the camera for me as we go through this exercise. Today's video is going to be an introduction to a circular saw, or the old street name skill saw. Skill saw, circular saw, what is it? Well, it's circular because it goes in a circle, right? Yeah, who knows? Basic components, right? We have our handle, and this is a right hand saw. They've added a secondary handle here. The plate, this bottom plate by the manufacturer is called a shoe, or a base plate. Manufacturer calls it a shoe. Okay. Obviously we have a blade. There's various blades that come with this saw. I just have a basic 60 tooth blade on it today. Here is the blade guard that rotates around as we're making our cut. On the back of this one, we have this lever, which allows us to adjust the depth of cut. How deep, how far down this is going to go. When working with framing lumber, we're always all the way up. On the front, we have another lever here we can release, and that allows the shoe or the deck to rotate to cut a beveled angle up to 45 degrees. So we're going to start with everything flattened out nice. Right now we're at 90 degrees. And then one other option we have here, right on the front of the saw here, this is a lock mechanism that locks the motor from turning so that you can loosen the bolt to change your blades. Those are the basic components. Notice I am unplugged. Anytime you're making any adjustments on here, unplug your saw. We don't need any accidents. Last component here obviously is the trigger. This is, you pull the trigger, it's going. It's not a variable speed, it just runs. And it cuts well. So let's get it plugged in here. The first cut I'm going to make is just a straight cut. So I've got a 2x4 here, and we just want to cut it to length. So I've made a mark on here, just arbitrary. I'm not building anything today. I'm plugged in. Eye protection, ear protection is a must with these. These saws are screamers, and they will wear your ears out in a hurry. All right, so our first cut is out of the way. Just going to be a nice straight cut. I'm going to line the front of the shoe up parallel to the edge of the board, and I'm just going to guide it straight through. Easy peasy. Now, if you're just starting out and you've never used a skill saw before, I would recommend clamping your workpiece down and utilizing both hands, right? I've been running these for a long time. Got fairly decent strength and can wheel this around just fine. So I'm able to hold my material to make my cut. When it's long, the shorter this gets, the more difficult this becomes. And you want this guy to be stationary as you make your cut. Right on? Ladybugs. Okay. The next cut I'm going to make is called what we call a bevel. Now, we have bevels and we have miters. You hear the terms probably on the internet quite often. What's the difference? Well, a bevel is cutting the edge, right? So I've got the face of the board up right now, and I'm going to cut a 45-degree bevel on the edge of this board, where a miter would be 45 degrees or less, any other angle across the face. That's the difference between a miter and a bevel. This saw, we are able to do both of those. So we'll start with the bevel. I unplugged my saw. release the lever. There is a gauge on here that tells us, and an arrow, so we can set the angle that we want. And so here I'm at 45. This saw actually goes all the way to 57. But 45 is going to be just fine. Now for this, because of the angle and the way the weight is applied to the board, I am actually going to clamp this down. Rather than, I've never successfully done a bevel cut one-handed. All right, so clamp that down, it's nice and secure. And another thing that's helpful is a guide. This is a speed square. I did not talk about this in our previous video about tools that you need, but this is really useful. Construction tool. It's got this nice lip on it that locks on to the face of the board. You use that as a guide. Ooh, ring the bell. I use that as my guide that will run along the edge of the base plate here. So this becomes my guide so that I can cut a straight bevel. Oop, all right. Let's plug this back in. My ears back on. Line it up here. Okay, I'm holding the speed square with my left hand, and I'm just gonna start the saw and guide it straight across. Notice when I make the cut, that automatically closes up. So now I have a bevel cut. Can you see that in the camera? Great. All right, so there's a bevel. Next up, we want to do a miter. Remember, a miter goes across the face. It's going to be flat, or a 90-degree cut. Let go. Back to 0. Lock it in place. Okay, now, bevel cuts, or excuse me, miter cuts can be a little tricky. And in that, you have to pay attention to your guard. So anytime you're doing a miter cut, it's going to require two hands. When I engage the wood, you turn it around this way. When I engage the wood at an angle like this, the guard wants to hang up, right? It doesn't want to rotate, and it's going to cause your saw to want to push left, or usually to the left, to the inside. So what we have to do is, with our free hand, slightly rotate the guard up, keeping our fingers away from the blade long enough to get, probably 25% of the way through the board. And then we can release the guard and finish our cut. It can be, I'm going to go at it from this side, so I'll have to do what I just explained. But sometimes, if it's feasible, it's more difficult to start. But if you start on this outside corner, oftentimes you won't have to lift the guard. It will catch like it would on a normal straight cut. But we're going to go at it this way, just for fun. And so you can see it. Handy dandy pencil. Use my speed square. And we'll draw us a nice 45-degree line here. And I am not going to use the guide. You need to push this out a little bit. I don't chop up my plug this back in, ears back on. Make sure my cord is out of the way. Back behind me, please. All right, so I'm going to line up the 0 mark on the line, to the left side of the line. I'm going to raise this guard up out of the way. Get us all nice and square, and away we go. And there we have, right on the line, nice clean bevel or miter cut. All right, let me clean this off. Don't need that anymore. Unplug our saw. One last thing I want to show you, and that's a rabbet. Previously I discussed rabbets and dados, and I said you can do these with a circular saw. So I'm going to show you how we do that. I normally do these with a dado stack, which is a stack of blades on my table saw. But if you don't have one, you can do it with a circular saw. First thing we have to do is determine the depth of our cut. For this exercise, this 2x4 is 1.5 inches thick. I'm going to take half of that, which is 3/4. So I'm going to adjust my blade height down to 3/4. I'm not going to measure it. That's close enough for our demo. Set my blade height. Depth of cut, 3/4 of an inch, from the bottom of the blade to the bottom of the deck, or the shoe. All right. We'll plug it back in. And I'm not going to make a full rabbet. I'm just going to go here. So that's about 1/2 inch. Rabbets are typically as wide as they are deep. But again, this is a demo. So here we go. I'm plugged in, I'm ready to go. Go back here. So this is just going to be straight cuts several times. I'm going to start by cutting to the right side of the line, and then I'm going to move out and clean it off. So I'm going to line it up. I'm going to look through here, this little opening in the saw, and by watching through this window, I can see where my blade is in relation to the line. So I cut it nice and square. Notice that I took the saw all the way through making this pass. If you stop short, pull it out, it's going to leave excess material in there that you'll have to chisel out. So now I've done that, I'm just going to go through, make several more cuts, and take the rest of this off. I don't know if you noticed, but I allowed the saw to dip. When you're doing this and you're working off of the edge, keep your finger on top of the deck here, just to ensure that all the weight, so that your saw stays flat to your material. Guard hung up a little on that one. All right. So is this perfect? No. But it worked. choose my 1/2 inch. So all I gotta do is come in now with a chisel and scrape off this excess material. That right here. All right, looks pretty rough, but I was kind of rushing through this for demo purposes. You get the idea. Right on. So there's a rabbit. A dado can be done exactly the same way. But notice the rabbit is out here on the end. A dado would be the exact same thing, except done here in the middle. So it would create this U shape in the middle of our board if we're going to connect our pieces. So there you go. I told you you could do it if you take your time, you learn the tool, and practice with it. You can make these much nicer than I did in this video. But again, this is a demo, and I really wasn't going for furniture quality cut. All right, so there you go. If you have any questions or comments, please post them down below. I will answer them as quickly as I can. What am I doing next? I think we'll talk about the table saw again. Yeah, my favorite tool. So that's your circular saw, your skill saw intro. Again, questions or comments, please put those down below. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Kim, for being such a good camera person. Give us a visit at the Lost Pines Market. We got a few items on there, and some new items are coming out pretty soon. Instagram, jc.jensen on Instagram. You can see all of my previous work and what I'm working on as I go forward. That covers it. Thank you, Dare. See you all down the road.